So let's talk about the pros and cons of living in Northern Virginia. We've already completed a series on the 6 counties that we believe are Northern Virginia, or make up Northern Virginia. Those counties are Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria, Loudoun, Prince William, and Stafford County. Now we already have separate videos for each one of those counties. This video is going to act as an overview. You watch this video, and then once you decide where you want to live, then you trickle down into the county specific videos. This is a 3-part series, so there will be a pros and cons video, cost of living, and a best places to live. Before we begin, I'm Abraham Walker with Ask a Walker, your Northern Virginia real estate agent. On this channel, we do all the research so you don't have to. When you're ready to start your real estate journey, whether that's buying a home, selling a home, or investing in real estate, click on the link in the description to fill out your perfect home questionnaire. After you complete the form, we will schedule a time to meet online via Zoom to answer any and all of your real estate questions. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for future videos about relocating to the Northern Virginia area. With that out the way, let's talk about the first pro of living in Northern Virginia, the great job market. With its close proximity to Washington, D.C., and since the Pentagon is located in Arlington, which is in Northern Virginia, we just have a very robust jobs market. A lot of that is tied to the fact that we have government jobs, we have military jobs, we also have tech jobs because we have companies that actually have set up base in Northern Virginia to service the federal government. If you're in any of those industries, then this is the perfect place for you to live. We also have a very strong cybersecurity market, and cybersecurity as a whole is blowing up as an industry. When you think about government jobs, sometimes you'll only think about the federal government or working in Washington, D.C. proper. There are also military jobs tied to the military bases that are sprinkled throughout the region. Now, I've already mentioned the headquarters that are located in Northern Virginia. Those are Fortune 500 companies. There are 11 in total. Some of the more noteworthy headquarters are Northrop Grumman, Capital One, also Amazon HQ2 is located here as well. Now, one thing that may surprise you is that Northern Virginia has a high average median household income compared to most areas in America, and it's a large region. Because of those two factors, we also have a very robust healthcare industry with medical facilities throughout the region. Those medical facilities attract doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals that are interested in not only making a high cost of living, also being in an area with great public schools and access to a lot of resources. A little fun fact that Arlington County has the highest concentration of PhD residents outside of Cambridge, Mass, where Harvard is located. Because we have such a high concentration of residents who have PhDs, that means that we have a lot of think tanks. We also have a lot of universities that are in the Northern Virginia region, which helps with our robust job market. The next pro on our list is public transportation. The most noteworthy way to get around as far as public transportation is concerned is going to be the Metro. The Metro connects Northern Virginia, DC, and Maryland all together on seamless tracks that stretch as far as Loudoun County and go as far as Rockville in Maryland. So that means that parts of Northern Virginia will be easily accessible for commuters going to work. The next form of public transportation we have is city buses. Now, these city buses are also kind of designed to move you from your home to the metro station and then from the metro to work. Okay, so each county has some form of a city bus service. We'll put a list up on the screen right now. Now, unlike your experience in a large city that has public bus transportation, our bus services are really moving, again, business people from home to work. So it's a little bit cleaner environment. It's a little bit less hostile. It's a little bit less exciting. So just keep that in mind, that this is not your traditional public transportation. The next type of public transportation we have is train service through the VRE. Now, the VRE only has 2 lines, one that's going from the west of Manassas and then coming into the city. And then we have another line that starts in the south, like in the Fredericksburg area, and it comes from the south up north into the city. So again, the train is not that accessible for areas that don't have a stop or that aren't close to it. So we see that a lot of people, even if it may be easier to maybe drive to the train and then get on the train to go to work, a lot of people just will drive in. The last mode of public transportation I want to talk to you all about is something called carpooling or slugging or using a van service, right? So with slugging is a little bit interesting. Now, slugging is not available throughout all of Northern Virginia. It's usually more available in the southern parts like Fairfax County, Prince William County, even Stafford. So with slugging, it's interesting. So you get into a stranger's car, and that stranger is trying to meet the minimum requirement for the high occupancy vehicle lane, also known as the HOV lane, and you need 3 people to meet that requirement so you don't have to pay to use that lane. So you are getting in a stranger's car who's going to drop you off at a predetermined stop. Usually the stop is around the stranger, the driver's car. It's around their job site. So they drop off their passengers and then they go on about their business, and then you make the last trek of your journey to your office, right? So that's slugging. Let's talk about one more option when it comes to public transportation, and that is the park and ride situation. So one of my clients was telling me that they used a park and ride exclusively to go to the Pentagon. And what happens is you park your car at the park and ride, and then you jump on like a shuttle bus or a coach bus or a very comfortable bus. It's not like a school bus or even like a city bus. It's like a chartered bus. And then that bus drops you off at a few stops along the way. That service is advantageous to most people because that bus meets the high occupancy vehicle criteria, and they get straight on the HOV lane. That's another option for you to get to and from work quite easily. I mean, I haven't seen really that many people using the bus or the metro and having groceries on it, but when I was in Chicago, I did. So it's not like that. Public schools is the next pro on our list of living in Northern Virginia. You've probably already seen that Fairfax County, Loudoun County, Arlington County has some of the higher rated public schools in the region. In fact, in all of Virginia, really. Here's the thing. Northern Virginia is so expensive that most residents have some form of a college degree. When you have these households that contain individuals who have college degrees, their importance or their desire to focus on education is much higher than other parts of, I would say, America. And since you have that, the public school experience here is unique because so many of the parents are educated. This is hard to explain to people because we'll get people who reach out to us and say, Abraham, I have to be in a highly rated public school. I think that the rating system makes choosing a school a little bit challenging because we're trying to distinguish or differentiate between highly rated schools across the region. The graduation rate in most of our schools through most of Northern Virginia is extremely high. Like, what is the purpose of sending your kid to school? Isn't it for them to graduate and then have some career opportunities afterwards, whether you're going straight into the workforce, maybe you're going into the trades department, or you're going to college? A lot of our high schools do a great job of preparing kids for that level. So I think that Northern Virginia as a whole has great public schools. Now, are there areas where the public schools are more distinguished? Most of those areas are going to be more expensive. I guess I'm just trying to help you to come to terms with the fact that Northern Virginia is quite expensive. Since it is quite expensive, you may not be able to afford to live in an area where the schools are top notch. But just because you don't live in an area with top-notch schools per se, your kids, your little ones are still going to have an exceptional school experience. Things to do is another reason why people love living in Northern Virginia. Depending on what section of Northern Virginia you live in, you have pretty quick access to Washington, D.C. Because you have access to Washington, D.C., you are going to be able to have any concert experience you could imagine because most of the concert tours stop in Northern Virginia. Last year, I took my son to the Kendrick Lamar concert for his 14th birthday. This year, we're probably going to the Drake concert. For myself, I like Drake. We also have all of the sports teams, all of the professional sports teams. We also have the Smithsonian Institutes, which is the best free museums in the world. And I would say even if you paid for the museums, they would be some of the best museums in the world. You also have the National Mall with all of the tourist trap stuff. We also have great restaurants throughout the region. We have a lot of Michelin star restaurants. Because Northern Virginia is a melting pot of different nationalities and different upbringings and backgrounds. We have a lot of different styles of cuisine, right? So you can get any type of food you really want in Northern Virginia. We also have great shopping as well. So there's Tyson's Corner, there's Tyson's Galleria, there's a couple outlet malls throughout the region. We have these international markets sprinkled all throughout the region. So with international markets, you can get any type of grocery you could think of. We also have the Kennedy Center. So the Kennedy Center is like a performing arts venue that they have some free shows at the Kennedy Center, and then they also have a lot of paid shows as well. Another thing that's kind of noteworthy is parks. We have tons of parks sprinkled throughout Northern Virginia. One of my favorite parks is going to be Great Falls. There's a couple waterfalls or water features. There's also some cool trails in Great Falls, and you can get right close up to the Potomac River. Because we're in DC, this is the West Coast, right? So that means that we're about an hour and some change away from Baltimore. We're about 2-3 hours away from Philadelphia. You can get to New York City in about 4 or 5 hours, right? There's just a lot of places you could drive to that are kind of major cities. And then we have beaches that are within 2, 3, 4 hour drives. We also have access to the mountains within 2, 3, 4 hours, depending on what type of mountain you want to go to. So there's just a lot of variety for, I think, adults to do. Now, with kids, there's a bunch of things for kids. My kids are a little bit older now. They're 12 and 14. So there's every sport that you could think of. Every sport you could think of, your kid will have access to. There's just so much here for your kids to do that you will struggle to make a decision between all of the options that you have. That's a great thing about living here. The last thing I want to cover with the things to do section, if you're trying to get away from Northern Virginia, right? So maybe you want to go on vacation, fly across the country or something like that. We have 2 airports that are within Northern Virginia, Dulles International, and then we have Nationals. So you can also get out of here quite easily as well. So the last pro on our list of living in Northern Virginia is real estate. Now, how is real estate a pro? I think that one of the beautiful things about living in Northern Virginia is that you have housing variety, right? So while single family homes represents more than 50% of all our transactions, you still have a healthy mix of townhouses and condos. Now, most of our condos are really going to be towards the eastern side of the region, closer to the Washington, D.C. border. So I'm talking about places like Arlington County and Alexandria City. So you do have this opportunity to kind of like graduate with your housing, maybe as your income progresses. Maybe you move here in your 20s, you get yourself a condo, and then as you progress in your career, you move into a townhouse, maybe in your early to mid 30s, and then you get into a single family home, maybe in your 40s or 50s, right? So you do have that opportunity to kind of gradually increase the size of your houses. Also, because of the way the region is kind of situated, a lot of the housing prices are very similar, regardless of like the distance that you move away from DC, and that gives you some variety too, right? So maybe you want to be towards the northern part of Northern Virginia, maybe the southern part of Northern Virginia. The southern part of Northern Virginia is going to be the more affordable part, but you'll lose access to a lot of public transportation infrastructure. So those are just the options, right? So real estate is a pro because you have variety. That variety gives you an opportunity to either fit your housing needs within a budget or to blow the budget all the way out and get whatever you want, right, for your home. Okay, so before we go into the con section, let me know you're still watching this video by typing NOVA in the comment section. Also, I want to make sure you know this is the Northern Virginia video. So this is the top level conversation about the pros and cons of living in the region. We already have 6 videos for each different county, a pros and cons video for that section too. If you want to, please show us some love by subscribing to the channel, liking this video, and sharing it with a friend. Our goal is to be the largest library of videos that covers all of Northern Virginia. So from east to west, from north to south, you'll find it here on our channel. Cost of living is going to be the first con we talk about living in Northern Virginia. For obvious reasons, it's expensive here, right? It's expensive. One thing I want to push back on is that while our houses are expensive, you also make more money in Northern Virginia. So we commonly have households with two individuals who make $100,000 a piece, or we commonly have households with household incomes that exceed $150,000 like throughout the region, right? No matter what part of the region you're in. So it's understandable that the houses would cost more money because the people who live in those houses make more money. Once you wrap your head around that, then I think you'll appreciate that while you're paying more money for your homes here, you still have a little bit more in savings than other parts of the country, because the rest of our costs are kind of in alignment with all of the costs you see outside of transportation, right? So outside of transportation, our transportation cost does exceed most areas because the length of our commutes is a little bit longer than a lot of other regions, and our commute times are longer. But as far as food cost and healthcare cost, that stuff is about the same. It's about the same. So yes, you will pay more money for your homes. You will pay more money for your transportation costs, but the other costs are kind of similar. So you get to pocket some of that money. So I already mentioned the traffic and transportation cost, and that is our next con of living in Northern Virginia. There's traffic here. There's not just traffic here during traffic times, right? Because in your mind, you're like, I'm moving to a big city and there's probably rush hour traffic, in the morning, and then there's probably afternoon rush hour traffic in the evening. That's not the case. There's usually traffic all throughout the day for random reasons. And believe it or not, there's even weekend traffic. So there was a study that was done that said that individuals who live in Northern Virginia spend about 48 hours a year in traffic. That depends. If you live like in Prince William County or Loudoun County and you're traveling into DC, you should expect to spend 10 hours a week in traffic alone, right? So 1 hour drives in or 1 hour commutes in, 1 hour commutes back. There is no break with the traffic here. But like I tell my clients who move to the area, traffic is a sign that people want to live here, right? If you go to a place where people don't want to live, there's usually no traffic. So I think that this is just a positive indicator that people want to be here. And you don't really hear people saying, you know what, I'm leaving because of the traffic. They're like, you know what, there's so many opportunities here. The traffic doesn't deter people. Don't let it deter you. Yes, it is a con, but it's something that you'll get over it, okay? The weather in Northern Virginia is our next pro. Did I say pro? Okay, so really weather is like a pro and a con. We have 4 seasons here, which is great. I'm from New Orleans. We really only had 2 seasons. We had hot and hotter. Now, some people dislike winter and summer here because in the summertime, because of the humidity, we're close to the Potomac River, it can get very humid and hot. So it's kind of like that sticky hot that is very unpleasant, right? And then with the wintertime, you could have like a blizzard sometimes, but not all the time. It snows every year, but sometimes the snow is like a snowflake, and then sometimes it's like the end of the world type of snow, right? But it's just anywhere in between. The good news about the weather is that no season lasts too long, right? So we have like an even split between all 4 seasons. So that means that you get only 3 months of summer. You only get 3 months of winter, and then that's it. Then you move into spring. If you have in your mind, if you've never really experienced spring or fall, those times of the year are transition times. So it still could be a little nippy in spring. So you need to have your sweaters, and it could be a little nippy in fall as you're moving into winter. So you will need to have your sweaters and your jackets, but they're beautiful times of the year. It is so beautiful during those 2 seasons. Those 2 seasons just make up for the muggy, humid summer and the potential blizzard winters, right? spring and fall are just amazing here, and no season lasts too long. Because Northern Virginia has a great jobs market, they have a great public school system, and we have great weather, this place is very transient. And that's going to be our another con to living in Northern Virginia. With the heavy military presence here and the government jobs and the government contractors, it's likely that some of the people in your neighborhood, right, they just won't be there your entire life. Now, this is something that really took a long time for us to get used to. I'm still getting used to it, and I've been here for 10 years. It's strange meeting someone you like and then they move 3 years from now because they were only going to be here for, they were stationed here, or they work for the State Department and they move around every 3 to 5 years. It's demoralizing, it's traumatizing, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast, right? That's just the nature of living in an area that has a lot of opportunities that draw people from other parts of the country to kind of pursue the next stage in their career development. So I think one of the things that we focus on to kind of help us deal with the transient nature is just kind of opening ourselves up to people throughout the region or throughout our neighborhood to find people who are going to be staying here for a long time, and having like a healthy mix of people who are going to be kind of transitioning in and out of the area, so that we can have like that stability. And then also we're kind of welcoming new people into our lives. So that's just something you're going to have to get used to, that you yourself, you may be watching this and you're like, Abraham, I'm only going to be here for 5 years. Just know that you're not the only person like that. That could become a little tiresome. It could be challenging to get used to. Once you get over it though, like once you come to terms with it, I think you'll be fine. Transient is a con, but it can be an asset over time. The last con on our list is diversity. Now, this is a little tricky here, because you're probably thinking, you know what, Abraham, diversity is really good. It introduces you to new people, introduces you to individuals you may not have known or may not have known you have something in common with. That's good diversity, right? And Northern Virginia has a lot of it. It's a melting pot of ethnicities, of cultures, of different regions. Like, you meet everybody from all parts of America here, right? Because Northern Virginia, I like to call it almost like the brightest minds of the country come to Northern Virginia to work for the federal government, or to work for Fortune 500 companies, or inside of the military, government contracting agencies. So you have some really bright people here, and it adds like this nice mix and texture to living in Northern Virginia. Now, the negative side of diversity is that once you move into the more expensive parts of Northern Virginia, you start to see diversity just kind of disappear. And there are parts of the region that are quite expensive, and that lifestyle is interesting. We live in Kingstowne because of how diverse it is. We wanted our children to be in a very diverse upbringing. We did think about moving to a more expensive area, but we decided against it because we didn't know how our children would respond to those types of regions. We also didn't know how we would respond to those types of regions, to be honest with you. So just keep that in mind, that once you move into the more expensive parts of the region, the more expensive, exclusive areas, then diversity is going to drop. That can cause your opinion of Northern Virginia to be colored in to a certain degree. Okay, so that was the pros and cons of living in Northern Virginia. Stay tuned for the next video in our series, which is the cost of living in Northern Virginia, and you can see that video on the screen right now. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you on the next video. Peace.